Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Titanic Connections event. Today, we are joined by author Norbert Zimmerman, and we are very proud to have you back once again. For this event, for the meantime, I would like to hand this over to our very own Anke Schleier. Take it away, Anke.
Thank you, Ryan, and welcome, everyone. We are very excited to bring Norbert Zimmerman back tonight, or well, this afternoon, this morning, depends on where you are. Some of you maybe recognize him because we had him before a couple of months ago. It was great to have you, and it is great to have you tonight again, Norbert. Thank you very, very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to inviting from the Titanic Connections again, and I hope we have a great meeting.
I'm sure we will, because we have a very special topic tonight. Maybe most of you guys out there will be aware of the fact that Norbert is a Titanic author. He already published 4 books, but so far, since he is like me from Germany, he only published his books in German so far. This fact will change tomorrow. Tomorrow, his first English version book will be published. This is the book. It's well in version, but it will look the same in English. Titanic-Chronology of a disaster. I'm sorry. So this will be available tomorrow, and this is the reason why we meet tonight, to talk a little bit about your book so people know what they can look forward to. And to not waste time, I will just head over to our first questions. We prepared some questions for you, Norbert. And if anyone out there has any more questions for Norbert, please feel absolutely free to put them into the comments. And when we are done with our questions here, we will happily pass your questions to Norbert as well. Amber, do you want to ask the first question for Norbert?
Absolutely, thank you. A new Titanic book is always exciting. Could you give us a little overview of your book?
Thank you, Amber. Hey, hello. Yes, the book is written in a number of chapters, and it begins with the history of the White Star Line and Harald and Wolff. And this historical period, shortly before the First World War, I found very exciting and interesting. And the immigration movement from Europe to the New World ensured that more and more larger ships were built. And Belfast, with Harald and Wolff, was the world leader in shipbuilding at that time. And I describe in detail how the Titanic and the Olympic were planned and built in Belfast. And I can say some German companies were involved in the building and planning. For many years, this was completely forgotten. And by the way, the floating crane that was used during the construction of the Titanic was made by a German company that was later based in my hometown in Duisburg. It's very interesting. Then I described what happened to the Titanic on her maiden voyage and why she finally sank. And I included the latest scientific knowledge about this. I hope so. And then follows a very long section of chapters in which I describe some of the very tragic fates of the Titanic passengers. Some of these stories are very emotional, I can say, tragically. I have always been interested in these stories and made it to my special Titanic topic. And in the book, I have tried to tell some of the unknown passengers in the book. And for an example, I find the very tragic fate of the only Japanese survivor, Masabumi Hosono, very tragic. He survived the tragedy, but he was blamed in his home country, Japan, for the rest of his life. And it's hard to imagine today, but at the time, as a man who survived the sinking of the Titanic, it was a disgrace to still be alive. And in Japan, it was especially bad. And he had a very hard life after the tragedy, very hard life. After that follows a chapter that I personally found particularly very exciting. In this chapter, I introduce the oldest surviving passengers of the Titanic. It's fascinating how old these passengers became. 5 of them became over 100 years old. And when you consider that their lives could be end so many others on April 15th, 1912, it's absolutely fascinating how old they became. 100 years or older. Fascinating. We all know that the sinking of the Titanic had its scapegoats, like Stanley Lord from the Californian or Bruce Ismay. In my book, I tried to find out what parts they really had in the sinking of the ship. And after that, I deal with some widespread conspiracy theories about the Titanic, the switch theory, and more. And at the end of the book follows a complete passenger and crew list of the Titanic. As you can see, the book is very detailed. I hope so.
Wow, that sounds like I cannot wait to read it, Norbert. And it sounds like you put a lot of time and effort into it. What initially sparked your interest in writing?
Oh, yes, thank you. Even as a child, I loved reading books. I think my entire life, I love reading books. But at the time, I never thought that I would write some books by myself. And when I was ill at home at the time, and it was 20 years ago, and read some Titanic books, I had the idea you could write your own Titanic book. Do it. Okay. But it's much harder to write a book that many people think. It took me several years to finish my first book. And at the time, I wouldn't have thought that I would write 5 Titanic books by now. But it's just great fun to write. And I think it was the right decision to write. But however, I don't think that I could ever write a novel or a crime. It's not my part. No, never.
That was an awesome question. I just want to, Norbert, the Titanic-Chronology of a Disaster was, it was published in March of 2019 in Germany. When did you first have the idea for this book? That is to say, when did you start researching it?
I hear the question, and after I had written my first 3 Titanic books, they dealt with some individual aspects of the Titanic. My third book about the so-called second sinking of the Titanic and the discovery of the wreck. I really wanted to write a book that included everything. And if possible, on the latest Titanic research. After I recovered from a long illness, I decided not to wait longer and started researching the German language edition of this book. And it was at the beginning of 2016.
All right, thank you.
Hold on. We have really some troubles with Zoom today. I'm very sorry about that. I tried to unmute Dan, but it won't let me. Ryan,
There
could
we
you
go.
try to?
Hi, Norbert. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Dan.
I've always thought time spent researching like books, media, stuff like that is pretty exciting. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your process this time, and also if anything really stuck out for you, something new you discovered or something like that really struck you with this new book.
Okay. Researching for a book and finding different sources is always very exciting. Absolutely. And for research for my book, I traveled to Belfast and Southampton and to do research, and it was at the original places of that era. And I just having visited the Tromsø dry dock in Belfast, and this is a wonderful experience. Fantastic. The dimensions of the dock give you an idea how big the Titanic was. And being in the dock where she was built makes you feel the history. And I also saw the slipways in Belfast, the place where she first slipped into the water. And that is already an emotional moment. It was also, I was also on board of the Nomadic. This was the tender ship that brought Titanic passengers on board in Cherbourg, and was able to make some photographs and video footage there. And that was really a wonderful experience that I had during the legendary Titanic Gathering 2017 in Belfast. And this was organized by my friend Simon Medhurst. And Southampton is also a place that every Titanic enthusiast must have seen, absolutely. And I was at the original places where he started her tragic voyage, and was able to research and photograph a few things. And these pictures are now included in the English edition. They were not in the German edition, but in the English edition. And it was an exciting time, and I will always remember that in Southampton I was identified by some German tourists when I visited the Sea City Museum in Southampton. And I was able to give the tourists a little private guiding tour. I will never forget that. Absolutely amazing. And another interesting thing is that during my research, I learned from the German Titanic Society that the previously assumed date for the keel laying of the Titanic in the most written books is wrong. It was not, as previously assumed, 31st March 99, but it was 22 March 99, more than a week before. And here you can see there are still new things you can discover about the Titanic.
Yeah, definitely. There are many new things you can discover every day. That's a good thing about Titanic, to be honest. Thank you for this answer, Norbert. And yes, I can confirm Belfast is a must-do for everyone who is interested in Titanic. It's a wonderful place. The next question comes from Amber. So I'm just reading it, but it was her question. Is it difficult to find information in German for the research for your book?
There are already some German language Titanic books, fortunately. But in the past, the German language Titanic books are mostly only existed as translation of the original English Titanic books. However, I got the most of my information and sources from the English language books and documents. But the information about the German companies which were involved in the construction of the Titanic came from German language books. I said it before, it was forgotten or ignored in the English-speaking world for a long time that German companies were involved in the construction of the Titanic. it only became known again through more recent research.
Thanks for that, Norbert. Norbert, you would be mainly into passenger stories from Titanic, but I was just curious to know, have you ever met any survivors or any descendants of Titanic victims or survivors? And if you have, like, have they actually helped you in your research for your book?
That's a good question. Thank you, Dan. Ryan. Unfortunately, I was not able to meet Melvina Dean in person, but I have met some descendants of the Titanic, of Titanic survivors. I have been friends with David Haseman. He is Edith Haseman's youngest son. For 15 years now. We are friends for 15 years. And he was a great supporter of my Titanic research and also provides the cover of my first book. This one. It's from David Haseman, the cover. His detailed account of his mother's experience and memories about the Titanic was a great help, very great help. And when he first told me how his mother experienced the sinking of the Titanic and the loss of her father, I got goosebumps. It was absolutely amazing and shocking. And I also met Simon Matros, I said it before, and he is a direct descendant of Quartermaster Robert Hitchens. He organized the Titanic Gathering 2017 in Belfast, and he was able to help me with some aspects of this book, and we became good friends. And a funny thing is, I'm also good friends with Beverly Roberts, and we found out that we grew up only about 15 kilometers apart as children. Really incredible. And but here you can see the Titanic connected people from all over the world.
Thank you, Norbert. To translate a whole book into another language isn't an easy thing. How did this idea cross your mind, and which difficulties did you have to face with this project? How did you solve them?
When my last book was published, the fourth Titanic book, and I brought it to the Titanic Convention in Southampton in April 2019. It's 2 years ago. Unbelievable. I got so many requests to publish it in English. And then I decided to translate the book. And when I was finished with my translation, I've checked it by a very good translation program. And after that, I sent it to Anchor for the first proofreading. And when Anchor corrected it, she sent it back to me, and I sent it to a professional proofreader in the USA. Thank you, Julie, by the way. After a few months, she also finished and sent the finished book back to me. And I now hope that my English-speaking readers will enjoy this book. And I can say, Anka, can a little bit more tell about our cooperation about with this book.
Yes, it was actually a fantastic thing to support you here. I can actually not remember how long we are friends now, but a few months now. I saw Norbert, I saw you in a few groups on Facebook, and one day I realized, hey, wait a minute, this is Norbert Zimmermann. This is the guy I owned a book from. And I was brave enough to send you a friend's request, but at this time, I never could imagine to actually help you with something. It was an awesome work to do. It was very very exciting to be actually the first one ever reading the English version of it. And it was for sure hard work as well, because, well, you can see it. This book is Pride. Oh, it's not showing, I think. Oh, yeah, there you go. It's quite big. So there are many pages to correct. But, well, for sure, since I'm from Germany as well, I could not translate it into English either. But since you were a little bit concerned about the fact that sometimes we Germans just translate something word by word into English, but in English there is no impression which is actually similar to our German ones. This is why I offered to make a first view over it and find such mistakes, so to say. But I have to say, there was not that much I did about the language. I did more about editing, so that, you know, everything looks the same and all that. And it was an exciting work. Honestly, it was really an exciting work. And like I told you before, Norbert, I will happily do it again with another book when you ever translate something else in English. I think we talk about that later. So it was a fantastic work. I really enjoyed it, and I will do this again, definitely, anytime. So it was very exciting to support you. And I think Elena has the next question for you.
Yeah, of course. And that ties right into what Anka was talking about. Your English version is mainly the same as the German version. However, she did mention there are some differences and things you changed between the English and the German. What were those changes, and why did you make them?
In essence, it is really the same as the German book. That's correct. But I changed something in the book. In the chapter of the Strauss couple, I changed the aspect that it is not true that in Ida's honor, her family drew water from the wreck site and poured it into an urn and buried it next to Isidore. After contact, I have contact with the Strauss Historical Society, and this story proved to be wrong. It appears in many different sources, but it is wrong. And I also made some minor changes here and there. And after all, I want my book to be historically correct. I can say the question to Anka. We have some discussions about the changes in the book. It was very exciting, and you can tell a little bit more about that.
Oh yeah, that was exciting. I think that, well, to proofread it, so to say, that was a nice work. But the really exciting thing was about discussing things, because I did not find mistakes, so to say, when I read this book. Definitely not. But there are some, how do I say, legends in there which maybe are not that true, so to say, anymore, since there are new researchers, new proofs showing up. And just an example given, for example, Thomas Andrews. We all know this famous scene in the '97 movie of James Cameron, Thomas Andrews standing in front of the fireplace, in his thoughts, refusing to get the life jacket on. And well, this is something what actually became a fact, that this is the last moment of Thomas Andrews when it was 2:15, 2:20. But this seems actually to be not correct, since I read it in another book and I did a little bit of research for myself. I actually found out that it's, so to say, highly unlikely that Thomas Andrews was standing in front of the fireplace when Titanic made her final plunge. It's way more likely that he was near the bridge. And when I read this part and I was discussing about this book, doing in English with Norbert, for the first time, I was a little bit too shy to ask, because, well, it's his work. You do not want to change another work, you know. But I was just like, Yeah, there is something. And I realized that Norbert is so open-minded to new theories, to new facts. He is not like, no, it's my book, it's in there and it stays. You were so open-minded for my, changes, so to say, for my ideas, for my new facts I brought in. And I sent all this stuff to him and to you and said, like, okay, look at this, check this out, and you can find something here. And we were discussing about things over hours in calls. It was fantastic, and that mainly everything, I guess, you actually put into your work and edit it. That there is new proof that it seems to be wrong. What is known so far. And this was really the exciting part about working with you on this English version. And I'm very happy to that I could help you here to maybe improve a few things. So even though this book is already fantastic, it was already fantastic. But this is really, really the thing I really enjoyed to discuss with you, and that you were so open-minded for changes, for discussions. So this was definitely the best part about our work together, definitely.
Thank you.
You want to say, go ahead. You can to say something about that.
Yes, I am do research about the Titanic for nearly 30 or over 30 years now. And you're right, in the most books, it's a fact that Thomas Andrews stand on the fireplace. It's seen for the last time there. And but I'm open for new sources, and we talk about this, and I do research for myself, and you make a research, and we can say, okay, this scene happened, but a little bit earlier, not at the time the most people thought. And okay, I think you can change it in my book. It's okay. I write it in my book, and that I changed it. My goodness. And okay, I'm open for new theories. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good that you actually mentioned it, because I forgot to say it. This scene happened. Yes, like you said, Thomas Andrews was standing there. There is evidence. There is a steward, I think, who actually saw him standing there. This scene happened. It was just way earlier. It was around 1:40, 1:35, 1:40 a.m. in the morning. And later he went back to deck. So this is just one example when you and me were discussing about things, changing something. And this was simply great. So thank you actually for letting me do that.
It's interesting. The most historians don't change it. It's a fact for over 109 years, and they won't change the fact, and don't read new sources. And okay, it's fact, and it's done. But I'm always open for new theories. Absolutely, and thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. And this is good to always stay open-minded. We all love this famous scene. It has something. It has something, this scene, Thomas Andrews standing there. It has something. You want him to be there, maybe. But I actually I do like the fact more that he was till the end struggling for people to get them into boats, to save lives. I actually like this thought even more than him standing in front of the fireplace. So he needed this second. We can only imagine what he was thinking about, like maybe his family he left behind or all that, because I think he was sure, he knew that he will die. But to actually think about that he was fighting till the end to save lives, I think this is, I like to think this even more, and it's more likely about, since we know so much about Thomas Andrews and his personality, this fits way more that he was fighting till the end. So yeah, this is just one slide change we did in your book, and it was, like I said, it was fantastic to work with you together. Okay, we lost track here a little bit, but that's not bad, I guess. I have just to look. Oh, Matthew has the next question for you.
Thank you, and hey, perfectly all right by me. This has been an awesome meeting. My question is probably the question of everyone here on the whole crew. When is the book going to be available? Where is it going to be available? And how do we get your signature? How do we get an autograph? When, where, and how?
It's a good question. The book will be available in bookstores worldwide. And anyone who would like can contact me and personally and get a signed copy. No problem. The ebook is available since today, and the print book is available at tomorrow, worldwide.
Awesome. That is awesome news. Thank you.
So Norbert, what are your plans for the future? Are you working on any new books, or are you gonna plan to translate some of your other ones into English?
Both. At the moment, I have starting translating the second sinking of the Titanic. This one, we all know it. I had the meeting with Titanic Connections in August about this book, and after that I had a lot of requests to translate the book as well. But I was working for the translation for the other book, and I must finish the other book at first. But I've started now to translate the second sinking of the Titanic. But I don't know when I finish the translation. It can be in a few months. I don't know exactly. And the other question is, there is another Titanic book in the pipeline that I will be co-authoring. It's a very exciting project, and but I don't want to give you too much information about it. It's a little bit secret, but I can say that it will be very exciting and interesting.
It definitely will, but I'm not saying anything about that either.
Yeah.
I think we had one question from the live feed. Matthew, did we?
Yes, actually, thank you. Norbert, we had a question that came in from, I hope I'm saying this name correctly. I apologize if I apologize. Sajid Hassan Pravat. I hope I said your name correctly. He wanted to know, he was asking a question about Captain Smith. So I guess it would be only appropriate to ask, is there any information about Captain Smith in your book?
Yes, absolutely. I have it in the chapter about the scapegoats of the disaster. It's I have a chapter about Stanley Lord and the Californian and Bruce Ismay, and a chapter about Captain Smith. What really happened in that night, and Captain Smith is definitely in this book. Yes, absolutely.
All right, awesome. Thank you for answering that question.
And for sure, he is in between, you know, in the chapters, in all other chapters. You cannot write a Titanic book without Captain Smith, right? Without mentioning him.
Definitely not.
But
And,
yeah, that is won't be a good one, right?
In some Titanic books, Captain Smith was so blamed about the fact that the Titanic sank, but I think it was not his fault. Definitely not.
Yeah, it's always, you know, when it comes to Captain Smith, and I think you actually have this in your book very nicely. he's always blamed for that so often, that he run Titanic so fast through an ice field. For sure, out of our perspective nowadays, no one would do that. No captain of a ship would just say, iceberg right ahead, somewhere here in the ice field, I don't care, just run through it. We won't do that for sure, because we learned out of it, so to say. But back then in 1912, it was actually a normal thing to do. So to blame him completely and say, oh, well, he ran her into this ice field so fast, it was quite a normal thing to do back then. And this is something you should keep in mind. And this is something you should always keep in mind when it comes to Titanic. You cannot look on Titanic out of our perspective today. It was a different time. It's long ago, and it was a different time, and people were thinking different things. People were living differently, and things were handled differently. And it's the same with Captain Smith. You know, for sure, no captain would do it today. Yeah, when he knows there are icebergs somewhere, for sure he would not do that. But back then, it was quite normal. So yeah, I just have it over here. It's actually, I should read it again. It's already a few weeks ago that I read it, but I think you have exactly this in your book, right? When I remember it right.
And I think personally, to blame Captain Smith for this is, or that he was maybe not on the bridge. Murdoch, Lightoller, all the officers of the Titanic would be a captain too later, and they have the ship. I found the English word.
Which one are you searching for, Norbert?
Patent. Ship's patent.
The captain's license. The
captain's license, and they also can drive a ship, and but always Captain Smith was blamed that he was the captain. He must be on the bridge. But I think it's not the fact that in the tragedy was
it could not be avoided by that. Even if he was on the bridge or not, I think it's highly questionable if it would have been avoided. You know, you cannot just say if he would have been there. Maybe he was. There are sources saying that. I know. I can remember we were talking about that, because actually your book was one of the first ones I ever read that he was maybe on the bridge. And I was just like, oh, really? I can remember that we were discussing about that. But for sure, the captain, he was responsible for the ship. But even a captain cannot be there 24 hours. Also, a captain needs to sleep. And for this, he has his officers. And right at the time when Titanic hit the iceberg, it was Murdoch who was in charge. And most likely, like we know today, most likely, he saw the iceberg before Fleet and Lee did in the crow's nest. So he already saw the iceberg slightly earlier than the lookouts. So, and I think it would have been the same with Smith. I think it wouldn't have been different, not at least much. If the question is, would have been, if there would have been actually 10 more seconds to avoid the collision, I honestly don't think so. Murdoch did everything right.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and Smith did as well. It is totally normal that a captain is in his bed at night. For this, he has his officers, right?
Some sources said that this was not the first iceberg that was seen in the crow's nest. And I think they're right. It was not the first iceberg.
Yes, for sure.
It was in a huge ice field. In a huge ice field, and not one and only iceberg. No, I don't think so.
No, definitely not. They maybe just didn't see it because it was passing too far away, like a few feet away, and in the darkness they just did not see it passing. Maybe they saw it, maybe they did not. This is actually a very interesting part in your book about who saw the iceberg when. Very interesting part in your book. I really enjoyed reading this. But well, we all know that the survivors in the lifeboats in the next morning, they were surrounded by ice. For sure, it was not one single iceberg and one single ship. It was a huge ice field.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, it was very sad that she actually hit one of those icebergs, because at this moment it was for sure the only iceberg in her way. But yeah, this ice field was much larger for sure. So I'm not sure, Matthew, do we have any more questions? Oh, Neagle, I just read this this comment from Neagle. I think Captain Smith had a complete mental breakdown after the Titanic hit the iceberg. That's an interesting thing you hear pretty often. How was his mental health, right?
Yes, he know exactly that the lifeboats can only save the half of the passengers, and I think he was mental broke down. It's
yeah, and you actually cannot really blame him for that.
No.
Yeah. So when you are standing there as a captain and you know you only can save not even half of the people on your ship, who would not break down? Honestly,
it's so terrible, and I think it's normal that you break down mentally.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have another question from Anita Reeve. Matthew, do we want to read that out, or what is it? I'm sorry, I'm having too many.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was going to say, it looks like we got 2 questions in the comment. Both of them involving Captain Smith and Titanic's log, which is, I believe that's what Anita is referring to, the captain's journals. I believe she's referring to the ship's log. Okay, so first question is from Sarah Thompson. Why did Captain Smith ignore ice warnings? And second question may or may not tie into that. It's by Anita Rev. Does Norbert talk anything about the ship's journal or the captain's journal in his book? Do you think there is any chance that yes, she said yes, so the logbook would have survived? Is it possible one of the crewmen grabbed the logbook?
I started with the first question. Smith, oh yes, I've lost it. Can you say the first question again?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was my fault. Yeah, the first question was, why did Captain Smith ignore warnings of ice?
Okay, we know that it could be possible that Captain Smith not known of all ice warnings at the day. We know one ice warning never comes to the bridge. It's still lying in the Marconi room, and Anchor said it before. It was at that time when you have the weather conditions that are on the April 14th, 1912. The weather was clear. The sea was calm, and the most captains drive straight on. And you see an iceberg, then you stopped. And this was absolutely the practice at that time. You didn't stop. In a huge ice field, okay. But the Titanic was on its maiden voyage. And I think he wouldn't stop it because it would be bad publicity when the Titanic stopped in an ice field. And then I think he hoped we do it safely and drive.
And actually, there is one thing to add. So just I can highly recommend the book. So there is a whole chapter about Captain Smith, and there are a few legends surrounding Captain Smith Norbert is talking about. I can highly recommend that. But given what you just said, actually, Captain Smith did not ignore the ice warnings, because we know that he actually turned the corner late, so to say. This turn Titanic had to do to head straight to New York, he gave the order to turn the corner a little bit later. That would, take more time for Titanic to arrive to New York. But he did this decision to actually avoid the ice field. Maybe this was a reason why he felt so confident that he's fine and there are no more icebergs on his way. But this is absolute evidence that Captain Smith did not ignore it. He did something. He turned late, and he lost quite a few hours. So if she would have ever get to New York, but I think he would have lost a few hours just because he turned the corner late. So he did definitely not ignore the ice warnings. So this is absolutely wrong to say that he did that.
Okay. Yeah. And the other question about the logbook. Yes, this is a question. I think to find the logbook is the holy grail of Titanic research, but I think that in that night, no officer or other member of the crew grabs the logbook and can save it. I don't know. And I think it never happened. And the logbook is lost forever, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, unfortunately, it is lost forever. But maybe it will appear one day. There are so many things out there just appearing we were not aware of. But like you said, I don't think so either. I think actually that this logbook went down with Titanic.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the officers had not enough time to save the logbook. The ship is going down very fast at the final moments, and I think no officer had the time to grab the
They were
logbook.
still working on the lifeboats till the very end, on the collapsible. Yes. So there was simply no time to go to the Marconi room or somewhere on the bridge and just grab it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you are right with that. I just thought before we head to our end part, because I'm excited about that. We have one more question from Nigel. Is Norbert still collecting his memorabilia? So I think he means if you are collecting Titanic stuff.
A little bit. I'm not the huge collector of Titanic's memorabilia. I'm a collector of Titanic books and documents, not so much as memorabilia of Titanic. And I have over nearly 160 Titanic books. And not so much memorabilia. Okay, I have Titanic coal and a little bit of the big piece from White Star Memories. Thank you, John and David. And but that's it. I'm not a huge collector.
But you have a beautiful postcards as well. I saw them. They're beautiful.
That's right.
And they are in your English book. They are in there.
Yes.
So yeah, it's definitely worth it to get this book. But we had to the best part of the evening, like when you asked me, because Norbert will read out a little bit of his book about a very special chapter. I actually can highly recommend it, especially because of that. Because there is the 100 Club in there, and he is talking about all survivors who turned 100 or older or very old at all. A very, very emotional chapter. So it is absolutely highly recommendable to buy this book. So you will give us a little reading from your book. So we will mute ourselves and we will listen to you. So you will now hear a short chapter from Norbert Zimmermann Titanic-Chronology of a Disaster, which will be published tomorrow.
Thank you. I hope I do it right. I will start with the oldest Titanic survivor, and that was Mary Wilburn. Nee Davis was the longest living Titanic survivor. She was born on Thursday, May 17th, 1883 in Southwark, England. She was 28 years old at the time and boarded the Titanic in Southampton as a second-class passenger to visit her sister Elsie F. Langford on Staten Island in New York. When the collision with the iceberg happened, she was already sleeping in her cabin. She was awakened by a steward who assured her that there was no danger. She then returned to bed, but was awakened shortly afterwards and asked to go to the boat deck. She quickly dressed and then helped Lucy Ridsdale, her cabin maid, who was in the lower bed and was afflicted with a club foot. When the two women were dressed, they went up to the boat deck together. Two men helped her getting into lifeboat number 13, which was lowered shortly afterwards. It was a moonless night, and the water was calm. The beautiful bright stars seemed to illuminate the sea around the sinking ship. She later remembered that there was hardly any suction when the Titanic sank in the icy waters. When the Carpathia came into sight early in the morning, she was paralyzed from the waist down and practically unconscious from exhaustion and cold. She returned to England a few months after the disaster, when the White Star Line offered her a free return trip home. In 1913, she returned to the USA, where she worked as a cook. 2 years later, she married John A. Wilburn, with whom she had a son, Carl. Her husband John died in 1972 and her son Carl in 1994. Mary Wilburn died on Wednesday, July 29th, 1987 in Syracuse, New York, at the age of 104 years and 73 days. This made her the longest living Titanic survivor and one of only about 30 still alive when the Titanic wreck was officially discovered in 1985. This was the part of Mary Wilburn. And now I will, the second oldest Titanic survivor. This was Marjorie Newell-Robb. And Marjorie Newell-Robb was one of the last two survivors, next to Ellen Shine, who was an adult at the time of the disaster. She was 23 when she boarded the Titanic. She was the daughter of Arthur Webster Newell and Mary Emma Greeley and was born in Lexington, Massachusetts on Tuesday, 12th February 1889. Together with her father and her sister Madeline Newell, she returned from a trip to the Middle East and boarded the ship in Cherbourg as a first-class passenger. After the Titanic had collided with the iceberg, Arthur Newell woke his two daughters and implored them to dress. Shortly afterwards, they went up to the boat deck, where Arthur reluctantly put his daughters in lifeboat number 6. Arthur Newell died in the sinking of the ship, and his body was later recovered by the Mackay Bennett. His two adult daughters, however, survived the tragedy. Marjorie married Floyd Newton-Robb, what a name, in 1917, and they had 4 children. Her only son was named Arthur Newell-Robb in honor of her father. Marjorie was musically very talented and gave violin and piano lessons in South Orange, New Jersey, and became one of the founders of the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra. She spent the last years of her life in Fall River, Massachusetts. During this time, she began to talk about her experiences on the Titanic. She attended several congresses of the Titanic International Society and the Titanic Historical Society, where she told her story. On Thursday, June 11th, 1992, She died in her sleep at the age of 103 years. She was the second longest survivor of the Titanic, after Mary Wilburn. She was buried at Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The woman got older than the man. It's normal, of course, but the oldest male survivor of the Titanic was Frederick Dent Ray. He became 70 years old. But I don't want to tell his story now, but another story, and they were very mysterious. On June 12, 2001, GPA, for the other people here, GPA is
James Pierce Morgan.
Yes. Okay. GPA reported from Italy that the 89-year-old Antonio Martinelli, the last Titanic survivor from Italy, had died. The Italian, who was still in diapers when the luxury liner sank, died in a hospital near Isernia, a good 150 kilometers southeast of Rome. And according to the information, Martinelli was born in Boston, USA, at the beginning of 1912. His mother brought him to Italy shortly afterwards. A few weeks later, mother and child returned to the USA on a ship considered unsinkable. They survived the sinking because the lifeboats were initially reserved for women and children, the television reported on Tuesday. On her maiden voyage, the Titanic ran into an iceberg on April 14, 1912, and about 1,500 people drowned. Sorry. Only now the problem begins. There's no Antonio Martinelli on the passenger list of the Titanic. Also, his mother does not appear there. Martinelli is said to have believed all his life that he was a baby on the Titanic. And how he came up with it remains unclear. The fact is that there was almost certainly no Antonio Martinelli on the Titanic. This was it.
Thank you, Norbert. And I need to apologize. I messed this one up. You meant the newspaper. I was just JP, and I was well, Morgan. And I'm sorry, that was my mistake. We were talking about the newspaper, so I'm sorry, guys. Please,
it's a German press agency.
Yeah.
GPA.
So I was totally confused here. I'm sorry. I didn't know you read this wonderful part of your book. This is why I was confused. I'm sorry. It's me to blame here.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So yes, this was three parts of your wonderful book now. And I can just say it again, highly recommend it again, to buy this book. It will be available tomorrow in the printed edition on Amazon. We will, and in the bookstores, we will put the link to Amazon in our comments here after the meeting. So if you're interested, and the good thing is, if anybody is out there who cannot wait until tomorrow, the ebook version is already available. So you can already download the ebook version. And before we close, Norbert, just because we had a wonderful question from Kathy coming in, and yeah, you know Kathy as well. We all know, do. Hello, Kathy. Great that you're here tonight.
Hello, Cassie.
So she says, congratulations on your books, Norbert. Do you have any tips and advice for new authors?
It's a good question.
Good question.
Yes. I know Casey write a book on her own, I think. She posted on a Facebook group a couple of months ago. I think use all the sources you can get, and all your books, and Encyclopedia Titanica is also a very good source to find some things about the Titanic. It's not the only thing you can find things about the ship, but it's a very good source to find some interesting things about the history and the passenger and so on. And
to double check information, it's very helpful.
Yes,
if you read something somewhere in a book, to double check it, you know, because you cannot always believe everything you read. So this is a very wonderful source to work.
It's a part that I have read here about Antonio Martinelli. I can remember when this story comes out in 2001. It was in the German press, and I've never heard the name before. But it was in the German press and in the newspapers, and I can remember. I think I never heard about this name, and I checked the passenger list. I didn't find the name, or the name of, not the name of her mother and of his mother, not his name. It was very curious.
A very interesting story. I was impressed when I read it in here. So yes, I can just highly recommend it. Get this book. It's absolutely worth it. It's wonderfully written, and it's a wonderful thing to finally have it in English. So it's amazing. It really is amazing. Norbert, we really want to thank you for joining us tonight to give us an overview over your book, to answer questions from us from the live feed, and especially for reading your book to us. It's highly appreciated. We are very glad that you came back to us, and we hope you will come back another day again.
Oh, thank you
so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It is always a pleasure for me to make a meeting with Titanic Connections. Thank you very much again.
I'm sure we will accept you back. I'm pretty sure about that.
Definitely.
Anytime.
No, I just want to say also thank you, Norbert, once again for coming back. I'm sure, like myself and many others, were really excited about the launch of the book. Even that just little bit of reading was absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to check out the book for myself. But I hope the book, well, I'm sure the book is going to be a massive success. All the best of luck with it. And as always, you are welcome back here anytime, my friend. You're always welcome.
Thank you. It's good to hear. And I always appreciate your support. Absolutely.
Always. But for now, we are going to wrap it up there, guys. It's just went after 9 o'clock here in the UK, so we're actually going to wrap it up there. But once again, thank you to everybody for the questions, comments. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to everybody that has joined this evening, and most importantly to you, Norbert, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
It was nice to see you.